all guests on 95.7 The Game up here on the River Islands guest line. Isn't it time for you to discover the islands? River Islands in Lathrop, and that's where David Lombardi of The Athletic joins us. All right, David, what is your initial reaction to the Brandon Aiyuk trade request?
Well, I just look at the timing, and the 49ers veterans report now in less than a week, but yesterday was the week out mark, and I view it as a last-ditch attempt from Brandon Aiyuk and his camp to try to rock the boat because the situation just does not line up in their favor. The 49ers have him under contractual control for this 2024 season already at a really favorable rate. They hold the threat of using the franchise tag for 2025. So Brandon Aiyuk is staring at potentially 2 years of team control at a team favorable price, which that's just the way the NFL is set up. Nobody's saying it's fair for the players, but that's the way that it is. It's very team oriented. And because of that, if he wants a new deal now, if he wants more money right now, he's going to have to come closer to the 49ers terms because their top option is to just stand pat and recognize that they hold the leverage here. The subsequent report yesterday after Mike Garofalo talked about the trade request was Adam Schefter saying that the 49ers have no plans to trade Brandon Aiyuk. So we saw it with Deebo Samuel 2 seasons ago. They obviously will listen to any and all offers because at it's a certain price, you'll move anybody. But it's just very unlikely that the 49ers would, hear an offer that would be able to make their team better this season. Brandon Aiyuk is a really good player. They like him on their team, and they really like him at the cost that they have him at right now. And holding the leverage that they do, the best option for them is to just stand pat.
And the best option for him is probably to sign whatever he can to get a huge raise on what he will make. But it seems like his number's higher than it was earlier in the offseason because the market moved. How far apart do you think these two sides still are, David?
Well, he has two options. He can bet on himself, and he could play on the fifth-year option. But the problem there is that there's no guarantee that he's going to hit unrestricted free agency because the 49ers hold the franchise tag. So that option, technically he has that option, but it's not as appealing just because of the scepter of that franchise tag. So when we talk about how far apart they might be, I think it's significant at this point. And I think that, the word significant there, let's view it in the context of the 49ers. They have to be really, really careful. They're incentivized to be extremely judicious with how they spend because they've paid more of these A-list guys than any other team in the NFL ever since Shanahan and Lynch showed up. That, it's a good problem to have, but every single season they've had at least one massive contract to give out. And you're looking at next off season where Brock Purdy is going to be in line for a new deal. If you want to keep this team together, keep the core together, to the greatest extent possible moving forward, you have to be very, very judicious with the financial Tetris, is what I call it, to make sure the flow control of the money works out. So they have a number in mind that they think is going to work so they can keep things together moving forward, and they don't want to go much past it. Meanwhile, Brandon Aiyuk has a number in mind, and I don't know exactly what it is, but I can infer based on where the receiver market has gone, based on the fact that Justin Jefferson absolutely obliterated the previous high water mark. I'm sure that Brandon Aiyuk wants something that, is not Justin Jefferson money, but it's something that's higher than it initially was. Just it's human nature to see your peers making that much money, and obviously you have a valuable resume to stack up with theirs. You're going to want your money to be closer to that end of the spectrum. So there's that gap right now. Nobody on the outside really is sure how big it is. But the 49ers are not really incentivized to move off their number because they're not just thinking about Brandon Aiyuk. They're thinking about an entire roster, including Brock Purdy, and keeping it together past this season.
David Lombardi, The Athletic, with us here on Willard and Dibs, 95.7 The Game. David, is it your understanding that Brandon and his agent may have moved the goalposts at one point because of that evolving wide receiver market? In other words, asked for one thing and then it changed when these other contracts started coming in?
I'm not sure exactly what I haven't been sitting in on these negotiations, so I can't speak with authority on that, but I think that just naturally that's how these things work, right? You talk and you just try to sit down at the table and discuss where, the fair compensation is going to be. And then there are market forces and there are dynamics that set precedent outside of the room that can impact where that discussion goes. So I'm sure that it's evolved over time. I would, just when we talk about the details and if and when this deal does get signed, I would really urge people to look at the fully guaranteed money, because I think that's, much bigger deal to players ultimately than just average per year. And, the only number that we have out there right now, I think Mike Silver reported it, is that the 49ers offered Brandon Aiyuk $26 million per year. But that's a really broad thing, right? We don't know if it was $26 million per year of, a lot of funny money, which means non-guaranteed money tacked on to future years that inflated that APY, or if it was a solid $26 million per year. So that when we look at contracts and when we judge contracts against other ones, it's the guaranteed money that ends up being really important and ends up being the determinant for how strong that contract is. And oftentimes in the media and on social media, we just see the APY and, people lose their minds over that kind of stuff, but it really has no bearing on the actual standing of the contract.
So what do you think, David, the timeline is as far as when he might report, or if he doesn't report by when, will they start tacking on fines? And is it an automatic that he will be fined, or do they have the ability to waive fines like they did with Nick Bosa last year?
Well, it is an automatic that he will be fined $40,000 per day, but they can retroactively waive it. Now, the only group of players that you could waive it for, according to this new CBA, are players playing on the fifth-year option. So, yes, they can waive the fines. We haven't heard from the 49ers to whether or not that they would plan to do so with the Brandon Aiyuk, but $40,000 per day is the number for missed days of training camp. And then if this extended into the regular season, you basically start forfeiting game checks. And he's set to make $14.1 million on the current deal right now. So you're paid by week in the NFL. You divide the $14.1 million by 17 games, that's $829,000 per game. Woo. A team also, according to the CBA, reserves the right to fine a player that up to that amount for a missed preseason game. So, I mean, if the 49ers really start playing hardball, they could theoretically begin fining Brandon Aiyuk up to $829,000 within the next month here if he's still not around for the preseason. I'm not saying it's going to get to that. I'm just saying that's when we talk about teams having leverage in these situations, that adds to the leverage that teams have because they have these tremendous fining capabilities, and they don't have to waive those fines. They obviously have the ability to, but we will see just exactly where the 49ers stand.
David, how do you think this all resonates with his teammates?
I think that players understand that you have the very limited opportunity to get a bite out of the apple in the NFL. I hate to use the cliche, but it's a business, and it's a really, really tough business. As I've just been illustrating, the business side of things is skewed in the team's favor in the NFL. So I think that teammates, these guys are players, and they understand that you have to get yours when the time comes. So you have to exhaust every single negotiating opportunity that you have, negotiating tool that you have. And I think that's what Brandon Aiyuk is doing right now. He hasn't missed any training camp yet. It's a week out, and he puts in the trade request because he sees that, the cards are stacked against him. He sees that it's going to be really hard to get the 49ers to move. Well, maybe you get a little extra concession out of the 49ers if they're desperate enough to avoid a holdout because they're in this win now year and they want to avoid, the drama that might have hurt them a little bit with Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel. Maybe the 49ers will, concede a little bit and sweeten the deal a little bit for Brandon Aiyuk to get him into camp. It's one of those things, I likened it yesterday to you're losing a football game and you're a little frustrated and you're driving down the field. You're not going to win anyway, but there's there may be a desperate small chance that you'll win. Your receiver makes a great catch near the sideline, but he only gets 1 foot in bounds. But it looks like maybe that second foot was in bounds, but probably not. And the coach is frustrated, and he throws the challenge flag. We call it a what the heck challenge flag. I kind of feel this was a what the heck trade request. Let's see what happens. Maybe the 49ers budge. Hey, maybe they do. Maybe they just decided we'll trade him to a team that's willing to pay him all this money. That's almost certainly not going to happen, but maybe Brandon Aiyuk is able to. I think that his representation and Brandon Aiyuk, they feel that, there might be some collateral damage here with the fans being upset that he demanded a trade, but nobody remembers the Deebo Samuel situation. I don't think anybody holds that against him anymore. So I don't think his teammates hold it against him either. I think that the business aspect of this is what resonates with players, and it should, because they've got to stand up for their money, and then once the season starts, guys need to be on the field. And if he's not on the field by the time the season starts, I think that's when Brandon Aiyuk's teammates might hold a more negative view of him.
Do you think it was a misplay by Aiyuk's agent to have the trade request come now? Because it felt like when Deebo did it in April of his year, it was more impactful.
Well, I mean, there's different negotiating tactics. I know that this one, you can argue that they were doing in better faith. It's more of a good faith negotiation. They thought, okay, maybe we can, without going out to the media and demanding a trade and getting all the fans worked up and, having the organization's phones ring off the hook, maybe we could just work on something behind the scenes. I think that was the thinking here. But then, Brandon Aiyuk started taking this to social media anyway. Obviously that didn't help the situation. And so anyway, they did it now. Like I said, it was a what the heck trade request. It was that challenge flag that you throw late in the game, even though it's probably not going to work.
David, I think also yesterday, this was tucked underneath all of it, and it scared some people that Brandon Aiyuk requests a trade, and then, oh, by the way, the 49ers put Ricky Pearsall on the non-football injury list. I know there hasn't been official word on what's going on, but is there any light that you can shed on that situation?
So, supposedly the Pearsall situation or the injury that he's listed with is not a major one, so it doesn't sound like it's tied to the Brandon Aiyuk situation. It would have to be a more significant injury for Ricky Pearsall. All I know is that NFI, the non-football injury list, it's a bit of a misnomer. If you get hurt away from the team facility, even if you are participating in a football activity, you go on NFI. So he could have gotten hurt doing something that wasn't football. I don't know. But, we've seen all these videos of Ricky Pearsall working out in Arizona, running routes, and it probably came from that. We'll find out, I'm sure, soon enough. And since that injury, if that is what happened, didn't occur at the 49ers facility, when rookies reported on Tuesday and the 49ers had to document that injury, they had to put Pearsall on the non-football injury list because that's what the classification has to be. So the word is, though, that it's not a serious injury, and it's probably not related to this whole Brandon Aiyuk trade request.
Okay. David, your best guess on how this all plays out is what?
I think I think Aiyuk is going to play for the 49ers this year. I'm not sure if he's going to play on that 50-year option or if he'll bring his asking price down and sign. I think that the franchise tag the threat of it probably gets Brandon Aiyuk to sign for a contract that is in that Amon-Ra St. Brown territory that we've been talking about over the course of this offseason. I don't know exactly when it gets done, but the 49ers obviously want it done sooner rather than later. They don't want another one of these to drag out indefinitely, but they're also thinking about their future, and they can't just cave for the sake of caving because that can hurt them in the future here when even more of these contracts come due and when they have to execute a new mega deal with Brock Purdy.
And just to clarify, by the Amon-Ra St. Brown neighborhood, you mean the actual guarantee, which is 34.66, as opposed to the $30 million average annual?
Yeah. So I'm always talking about fully guaranteed money. I had figured that Aiyuk would come in over, and I think that's what he wants. And I think that the 49 over the Amon-Ra St. Brown line, and I think the 49ers might ultimately benefit from executing something like that as well, because you have to remember that you could work and monkey with the numbers more if it's guaranteed money, because signing bonus money and guaranteed option bonus money can be prorated, stretched out over 5 years against the cap. So if they do give Brandon Aiyuk a big signing bonus, and if they do give him a bigger option bonus, they actually can reward him while also becoming more flexible with their own salary cap situation. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was more than $40 million in fully guaranteed money for Brandon Aiyuk when this is all said and done, because ultimately, in a weird way, that could benefit the 49ers. Cash-rich teams actually can fare better in the salary cap era, because they can manipulate those numbers and create some room with the financial Tetris that I was talking about. So my projected deal for Brandon Aiyuk, I wrote this way back in like February or March. I was north of that $40 million fully guaranteed. And I think that's probably where Brandon Aiyuk will end up if they can get this deal done this offseason.
David, great stuff, man. We thank you so much for hopping on.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, David Lombardi, The Athletic.